In him, when Cameron Cave receives a blow to the head that gives him brain trauma, he takes on the training of Isaiah White, the football superstar, that leads him on to realize there's something deeper and darker about him. Hello and welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and let me know down in the comments below what you thought of him. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle, or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not, and taking it right in a positive. This film is a good spectacle. It's visually great within the way it integrates a fantastic soundtrack, giving you the right beat, the right tempo. It has a pretty good pacing throughout, and there is all the right ingredients that promises something good about its premise, about something about the legacy, the life of this one kid that wants to grow up to become an all-star quarterback, and receiving a blow to the head, getting on that brain trauma leads him into this circumstance where he has to train in with this other guy that is his legend, his Isaiah White, a superstar football player that I am a big fan of, sort of what they lead onto and how they gradually crescendo the atmosphere throughout the whole film. There certainly is horrific moments, the gore and guts of certain kills and everything that comes about certainly escalates the situation in the proper way that you would expect and that you properly receive throughout what this film has to offer, adding in some different mixtures of thematic elements along the way that will properly execute certain ideas that you may be wanting, that you are ultimately coming about to see. It is weird and trippy at certain times, and it has some great cinematography when it looks like this weird x-ray vision of the action that's going on screen throughout different football practices of this guy training, of trying to get better. There is some unique shots of what they utilize with the camera work, but also with the visual color grading on screen, with the lighting that enhances some of the experiences, that changes up the course of what you come to expect out of just a casual football training experience. When there's something that's really devastating, a blow to the head, you get an x-ray vision or something unique that utilizes a new form of visual to the scope of what you're looking at just by the general appeal of the film. Which takes me into the mix elements. This is something I have to warn you about, is it can be trippy. It's weird for the sake of being weird. There is somewhat of an explanation near the end for what all is going on with the circumstance, and I won't spoil that particular case, but the way you go about it can just be a hit or miss depending on what sort of circumstance you are going into this film for. I personally kind of am in a fan of films that don't need to explain themselves, can go into weird for the sake of being weird circumstances without needing to regurgitate on what it is ultimately doing from the backstory, with everything that is not formally explaining to the audience. That adds in the nice fantasy element just as well. But this, while it's grounded and surreal, won't always fit well in the circumstances you are leading into. And there were some moments that the weirdness just led on to certain parts of the story that I wasn't a huge fan of, because once you're getting into some of the negatives I have to say about this story that I'll get to in a minute, ultimately there's something where an explanation almost feels like it would have built up this story to be something a little bit better. While it works well on its own grounds, there's certain beats here and there that can be a little off tempo, but there's ultimately an expectation that while it grounds itself well, it won't always work well for everyone. What you're getting from the background of this kid wanting to be a superstar, and this film isn't ultimately delivering on the formal expectation. While it is produced by Jordan Peele, it is certainly not directed by Jordan Peele, so it's not something you expect to go up on the level, but it's still, of course, anything you would want out of a sports horror film to be more unique, to deliver well and effectively on its own story. And while it can hit some of the right beats, depending on what you're ultimately coming about with what your expectations are, you may need to lower them just because of the circumstance. Not knowing what to get out of the story is something that the trailer can misadvertise at certain times for just a general weirdness that this story exploits. Which takes me into the negatives. Unfortunately, there's so many different thematic elements. The ingredients feel proper to this film, but ultimately, there's so many things that feel unexplored within the scope of this film. There's cinematography that feels a little off because most of the time you're close and comfortable with the characters themselves, but when you're getting to the action and looking at this as a football film, you're not getting the wide angle shots that will give you the scope and scale of the actions that's being done. And most of the film is being taken place within the practice and training. There's no actual football game going on, which isn't a fault to the film as a whole. But if you are expecting your typical sports film or adding the horror ingredients to that, this is not what that film is having to offer. There's different dystopian style things and imagery that come about along the way that are fine for what it's delivering on. But when you're getting all of these themes, these distinct messages that you're kind of touching on, you're addressing within the film, and the subtext of the context that this film is sort of seen at the front and center, ultimately, it's not diving deeper into those subjects, into those different contexts that could be thematically richer. And even if you're looking at the idea where it's weird for the sake of being weird, getting the unbalance of not having deep context to the story, deep context to the themes, and not getting anything that is of a proper explanation, both of those things combat against each other to make it worse by the end, making it less appealing of a watch. It's not horrific by the means of being too overly boring for the grand scale of things, but it certainly can lend itself out to be pretty disappointing when some things about the finale feel a bit rushed. The way you gradually crescendo to that moment just doesn't ultimately feel like it earns all the spots that it wins over, and the blow to the head that gets this one guy, Cameron Cade, into that certain circumstance of leading on to being trained by that football superstar, it can come off as a little bit goofy, a little bit rushed within the circumstance you are all lending yourself into once you're all kind of getting the gist of what this film is coming to offer. That ultimately can end up to be a little bit of a disappointment because of all these different things that are combating against each other and promising these things that it underdelivers. So that's just my personal thoughts on him, which I have to rate a simply 5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of him. Was it good? Was it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're now going to look into seeing this film or not based on my review, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So let's just all make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.